A good doctor does not wait for the patient to collapse before asking what went wrong. In traditional Chinese medicine, there is an old ideal: treat illness before it becomes illness. Read the weak signals, strengthen the body, and act while the cost is still small. Wildfires deserve the same kind of intelligence. Once a wall of flame reaches a village, courage matters and firefighters matter. But the decisive work often began months or years earlier, when there was no smoke in the sky and almost nobody was watching. That is the question Spain is facing today. For July 23rd, the National Weather Service forecast the peak of the current heat wave with 42 to 44 degrees Celsius in parts of the southeast and local temperatures above 45. RTVE, citing the European satellite system, reported that more than 123,000 hectares had already burned in Spain this year. These numbers require care. 45 degrees is a local forecast, not a national measurement. The burned area figure is a satellite estimate, and heat alone does not explain the cause of every individual fire, but the risk environment is unmistakable. The flame is a visible symptom. The underlying condition forms long before ignition. Dry vegetation accumulates. Forests become continuous fuel. Farms are abandoned. Access roads are neglected. Villages expand into the wildland edge, and institutions prepare for the emergency without investing enough in the quiet season. A spark may come from lightning, an accident, negligence, or a deliberate act. The spark matters, but whether that spark remains small or becomes a catastrophe depends on the landscape, the weather, the buildings, the response system, and the decisions already made. Preventive medicine is not fortune-telling. It does not claim that illness can always be avoided. It changes the odds by acting on conditions that are still changeable. Wildfire prevention works the same way. Clear dangerous fuel before the hottest weeks. Maintain fire breaks before the wind rises. Map vulnerable residents before an evacuation order. Protect water points before the pumps arrive. Train neighbors before panic begins. None of this produces dramatic footage. That is exactly why it is easy to postpone. Prevention succeeds by making a future disaster less visible. Lao Tzu gave this logic a simple form. Act before something appears. Govern before disorder begins. This is not a call to control everything. It is a reminder that timing changes the nature of action. Before the fire, a crew with tools can remove fuel. During the fire, aircraft, engines, police, hospitals, and entire communities may be put into danger. The same task becomes harder, more expensive, and less certain with every hour of delay. Wisdom is not only knowing what to do, it is knowing when the action is still small enough to work. The first layer is the forest itself. Reduce excessive fuel near high-risk corridors. Restore a mosaic of woodland, pasture, and cultivated land instead of allowing one continuous mass of vegetation. Support grazing, selective clearing, prescribe burning where it is legal and professionally managed, and access routes that crews can actually use. Local knowledge matters here. The goal is not to sterilize nature or remove every tree. Healthy landscapes still burn sometimes. The goal is to slow fire, lower its intensity,
and give people and ecosystems a better chance to recover.
The second layer is the village. Homes at the edge of wildland need defensible space, cleaner roofs and gutters, safer vegetation, visible addresses, reachable water, and evacuation routes that do not depend on one narrow road. Public warnings must reach tourists, older residents, and people who do not speak the local language. Families should know what to take, when to leave, and where not to drive. A village is not protected by one heroic vehicle. It is protected by hundreds of ordinary details that keep the first failure from triggering the next. The third layer is long-term governance. Spain's government has called for a national agreement that gives prevention, public awareness, stable resources, mitigation, and adaptation a permanent place beside emergency response. That principle matters beyond any party or one fire season. Forest work cannot begin only when television crews arrive. Municipal plans cannot sit unread until the sirens start. Budgets, land management, insurance, construction rules, energy infrastructure, and local training have to connect. If prevention disappears when the headlines disappear, the next emergency begins with the same weakness. We should also be honest about the boundary. Prevention does not mean zero fires. Under extreme heat, drought, and wind, even a well-managed landscape can burn. Climate adaptation cannot replace rapid suppression. Professional firefighters, aircraft, medical support, or evacuation, treating the condition before the crisis and fighting the crisis when it comes are not opposing ideas. They are one system. The mistake is to celebrate emergency response while starving the work that could reduce how often that response must face the impossible. This is also a lesson for organizations and for ordinary life. A company rarely collapses on the day the crisis becomes visible. Cash flow weakened earlier. Standards slipped earlier. One person became indispensable earlier. A family conflict, a health problem, or public failure also sends signals before the breaking point. We often reward the person who arrives during the fire and ignore the person who cleaned the dry grass. But mature leadership is measured by fewer alarms, not more dramatic rescues. The highest skill is to turn tomorrow's emergency into today's manageable responsibility. Spain's fires are a warning, but they can also sharpen our idea of action. Clear the forest while the air is still clean. Repair the roof while the sky is still blue. Build order before disorder. Ask for a price. This is not fear of the future. It is respect for time. The fire line will always need brave people. The greater responsibility is to make sure they are not asked to solve, in one desperate night, everything we refuse to do during 100 quiet days. The best time to govern a fire is before the fire. I'm Xuanshang.